YouTube script, opening, the strategic power of silence. The more you explain, the weaker you look. The more you react, the more control you give away. We live in a world that rewards noise, outrage, arguments, drama, but real power is quiet. When your words are twisted, when your reaction becomes entertainment, you're no longer in a conversation, you're in a trap. That's why silence isn't weakness. It's a shield, a boundary, a strategy. Because silence says, I don't need to prove myself to you. I already know who I am. In a society addicted to attention, staying silent is one of the most powerful moves you can make. So next time you're provoked, pause and let silence do what words can't. In today's world, everyone's shouting to be heard. Opinions fly, emotions flare, and noise never stops. But what if I told you that real strength doesn't raise its voice? It listens, it observes, it waits. Silence isn't weakness anymore, it's a strategy. It's how you protect your peace, disarm chaos, and reclaim control. When the world expects you to react, staying calm confuses them. It forces others to reveal themselves, while you remain grounded. Think about it, who holds more power? The one who yells, or the one who doesn't flinch? Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to say nothing at all. What do you do when your truth gets twisted? When no matter what you say, they spin it, mock it, and feed off your reaction? That's not a conversation anymore, it's a trap. And the moment you respond, you're playing their game. This is where silence becomes your shield. Not because you're weak, but because you're done handing out access to your peace. They want a show. They want drama. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no defense, just calm silence, you take the stage away from them. Remember, real power isn't proven by speaking louder. It's proven by knowing when not to speak at all. Silence isn't emptiness. It's power under control. It's easy to speak, to react, to defend, but it takes real strength to pause to hold your ground without needing to explain yourself. Because silence isn't what happens when you have nothing to say. It's what happens when you finally realize you don't need to say anything. In that stillness, something powerful shifts. You're no longer playing their game. You're standing in your own. When you stay silent, you're not retreating. You're reclaiming your energy, your dignity, your peace. So remember this, silence doesn't mean you've lost your voice. It means you've mastered when to use it. YouTube script, when you're lied about or falsely accused. What do you do when someone lies about you? When people whisper behind your back, twist your words, and try to paint a version of you that simply isn't true, your first instinct is to speak up, to defend yourself, to explain. But here's the hard truth. The more you explain, the more guilty you look, especially to those who are already rooting against you. Because people who lie about you aren't looking for the truth. They're looking for your reaction. They want you emotional, off balance, desperate to clear your name. Why? Because when you react, they feel in control. They'll twist your defense into proof that you're hiding something. That's the trap. And the only way out is not to step in at all. Marcus Aurelius said it best. If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it. That's it. You don't owe anyone a performance. You owe yourself integrity. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, we'll call him James. He was falsely accused at work, nothing major, but enough to spark gossip. People distanced themselves. Whispers grew louder. He could have fought back, scheduled meetings, sent long emails defending himself. But he didn't. He chose silence. He focused on doing his job with excellence. He stayed calm, professional, grounded. And weeks later, the truth came out. The accuser had a history of manipulation. And because James never fought back, he never lost face. He walked out of the storm with dignity fully intact. That's what silence gives you protection. Not just from others, but from becoming someone you're not under pressure. So what should you do when someone lies about you? First, trust the long game. Lies spread fast, but they collapse just as quickly. Truth moves slower, but it doesn't need defending. It reveals itself with time. Second, stay anchored in your values. You are not defined by what people say, you're defined by what you consistently do. And third, let karma do the heavy lifting. Those who build their world on lies always end up trapped in their own web. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to live in a way that doesn't need explanation. So the next time someone lies about you, don't chase the noise. Stand still, stay silent, and let the truth do what it always does: come home. YouTube script. When you've been betrayed by someone close, there's a unique kind of pain that only betrayal brings. Not from strangers, but from those closest to you, friends, family, partners, the ones you trusted the most. When it happens, the instinct is immediate. You want to confront them. You want to ask, why? How could you? You want an apology, closure, something. But here's the hard truth most people miss. By the time someone betrays you, they've already justified it in their mind. They don't feel what you feel. And worse, some don't even care. And the more you chase answers, the more you reopen your own wound. Because betrayal isn't just an action, it's a performance. And the moment you react with emotion, confusion, or pain, they feel powerful. They feel in control. So, how do you win a game you never asked to play? By refusing to play at all. You go silent, you walk away. Not to avoid the pain, but to protect your soul. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Betrayal is that friction. It stings. It shakes your foundation. But it also reveals the truth. It separates who's real from who was only convenient. Let me share a story. There was a woman, Sarah. She had a best friend for over 10 years. They shared dreams, doubts, celebrations. But one day, Sarah found out that this friend had betrayed her, spreading secrets, undermining her success, all out of jealousy. Sarah was devastated. At first, she wanted to lash out. She wrote angry texts, rehearsed what she'd say, but something told her to pause, to breathe. And instead of confrontation, she chose silence. No fight, no drama, just a quiet exit. And do you know what happened? The friend waited for the explosion, for the chaos, but none came. And that silence, it haunted her. Because silence forces people to sit with themselves. It gives them no role to play, no attention to feed off, only a mirror. So, if you've been betrayed, remember this. First, accept who they really are. Don't cling to who you thought they were. Second, don't waste words on someone who erased your value. And third, walk away without explanation. Let your absence speak the truth they don't want to hear. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. You're not hiding. You're healing in silence. YouTube script. When you're insulted or mocked. Insults are cheap. That's why the weak use them. When someone mocks, you throw sarcasm, passive aggression, or a low blow in front of others. They're not trying to speak truth. They're trying to trigger you because your reaction is their reward. The moment you snap back, raise your voice, or defend yourself, you give them exactly what they want: validation. They've pulled you into their chaos, and now you're dancing to their tune. Here's what most people miss. You don't need to win the argument. You just need to not enter it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Think about that. When someone insults you, what they're really doing is inviting you to abandon your dignity, to stoop to their level, to roll in the mud so they can say, "See? You're no better than me. But a Stoic doesn't roll in the mud. He stays grounded, calm, still, unshaken. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, David. He had just earned a well-deserved promotion. At a company event, in front of everyone, a jealous coworker took a jab. Wow, I guess they're giving promotions to just anyone now. All eyes turned to David, waiting for the comeback. But he didn't argue. He didn't defend. He looked the man in the eye, smiled, and said absolutely nothing. Just silence. And in that moment, he didn't just win the room, he won the war. Because silence strips power. And nothing frustrates an insulter more than being ignored. So, how do you handle insults? First, recognize what they're fishing for. They're not looking for truth. They're looking to disrupt your peace. Don't give them what they want. Second, let your stillness speak. When your face doesn't flinch, when your tone stays calm, you send a message louder than words. You don't control me. Third, hold your frame. Confidence doesn't argue. Self-respect doesn't explain. When you refuse to step down, they have nowhere to rise. At the end of the day, you don't need to match their noise. You just need to master your silence. Because real strength doesn't yell. It doesn't need to. And sometimes the most devastating response is indifference. When you're manipulated by someone playing the victim, some people don't want resolution, they want attention. They don't want truth. They want to control the narrative. So what do? They play the victim. They cry, they twist facts, they erase their own role, and suddenly you're the villain. To everyone watching, it looks like you're attacking someone who's just hurting. This isn't conflict, it's performance, and you've just been cast as the enemy. The more you explain, the worse it gets. Because in the court of public opinion, emotion always beats logic. No matter how much proof you show, they'll spin it as cruelty. Epictetus once said, "To complain is always non-productive and never appropriate." He wasn't talking about genuine pain. He was talking about weaponized suffering where complaining becomes a tool of control. Let me share a story. Rachel worked in an office with someone just like this. Every time this coworker was held accountable, she'd cry, deflect, and flip the script. Rachel stayed calm, logical, polite. She brought facts. She spoke truth. But every time, it backfired. Because her coworker wasn't playing fair, she was playing emotional theater. Eventually, Rachel made a decision. No more explaining, no more defending, just silence. She stopped playing the part they assigned her. And slowly, people began to see the pattern. The victim always had a new villain, always a new sob story, always a fresh injustice. And eventually, the act collapsed. So how do you handle someone who manipulates through victimhood? First, don't defend yourself. They're not listening. They're performing. Don't feed the show. Second, stay emotionally detached. Observe the pattern. Don't absorb the chaos. Your calm is your clarity. Third, trust repetition. People may believe a lie once or even twice, but patterns don't lie. Eventually, masks fall, and the truth stands alone. You don't owe clarity to someone who thrives on confusion. Let them act. Let them rewrite the script. Let them gather their audience. Because the one thing they can't handle is your silence. Silence doesn't just starve manipulation. It brings down the curtain. And when the applause fades, when no one's left watching, they'll have to sit in a room with the truth. And that's a scene they can't escape. YouTube script, when your value is taken for granted. You show up, you care, you give. You're the one who remembers birthdays, sends that check-in text, listens when no one else does. And over time, you start to notice something. No one's asking how you're doing. No one reaches out unless you do first. And when you go quiet, the silence stretches longer than it should. That's when it hits you. You're not being valued. You're just being convenient. And here's the paradox. The more you try to prove your worth, the more invisible you become. Because people don't value what's always available. They value what they're afraid to lose. Seneca once wrote, "Time discovers truth." And sometimes, the truth people need to discover is your absence. Let me tell you a story. Jake was that guy. The reliable one, the thoughtful one. He checked in, showed up, remembered the little things. But slowly, he noticed if he stopped calling, no one called back. If he stopped asking, no one asked in return. So Jake made a decision. No announcements, no accusations, just quiet distance. And what happened next was everything. The people who truly cared, they reached out. The ones who didn't, they faded into the background as if he'd never been there. That silence wasn't punishment. It was clarity. So if you're in that space, giving more than you receive, feeling unseen despite all your effort, remember this. First, stop chasing. Your value doesn't need a spotlight. It needs space to be noticed. Second, say nothing. Silence creates awareness. When your presence goes missing, your worth becomes undeniable. Third, watch who leans in when you pull away. That's your answer. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, and those who do won't need to be reminded. In a world full of noise and performance, your quiet exit can be the loudest statement of all. Don't beg to be seen by those who close their eyes, because sometimes the most powerful way to say, "I matter," is simply to walk away and let the silence echo where your presence used to be. YouTube script. When you're provoked to lose control. Let's talk about something subtle but dangerous. There are people out there who don't want peace. They don't want truth. What they really want is control. So they poke, they prod. They say things designed to sting not because they're bold, but because provoking you is the only way they feel powerful. And here's the part most people miss. They're not trying to start a fight. They're trying to steal your frame, to pull you out of balance, to make you act on their emotion, not your own. Because the moment you flinch, the moment you snap, they win. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Let me tell you about Adam. Adam worked with someone who thrived on chaos. Every meeting was a subtle jab, a backhanded comment, a passive insult. Always vague enough to avoid consequences, but sharp enough to trigger a response. At first, Adam defended himself. He argued. He explained. And every time, he left feeling more drained than before. Until one day, he made a shift. The next time it happened, Adam didn't flinch. He didn't argue, didn't sigh, didn't roll his eyes. He looked the guy in the eye, smiled calmly, and said nothing, just silence. No fuel, no reaction. And that's when something powerful happened. The provocateur lost his grip. Because when you're used to lighting fires, you panic when the match no longer burns. Eventually, he stopped. Because without control, the game falls apart. So how do you handle this kind of emotional bait? First, recognize the pattern. When it's consistent, it's not personal, it's strategic. Second, hold your frame, your breath, your tone, your energy. Don't let anyone knock you out of alignment. Third, let calm be your power. Because the more unshakable you are, the more powerless they feel. Not every fight is worth entering. And not every opponent deserves your energy. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one who speaks the loudest. It's the one no one can move. Because his silence isn't empty. It's armor. YouTube script, when they regret losing you. Regret is loud, but silence? Silence is louder. There comes a moment after they've ignored your worth, taken your presence for granted, assumed you'd always be there, when they suddenly realize you're gone. And now, the silence they once overlooked becomes deafening. They remember how you showed up, how you listened, how you gave more than you ever asked for in return. But by then, it's too late. Because here's the truth. Most people don't want to admit. If someone only starts to value you after you leave, they never truly valued you when it counted. And going back just because they finally see it? That's not love. That's guilt. That's comfort chasing familiarity, not respect. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And part of self-mastery is this. You don't reopen doors for people who slam them in your face. You don't lower your standards to ease their conscience. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, Olivia. She gave everything to her relationship. Her time, her patience, her heart. But over time, she became invisible. He got comfortable, stopped trying, took her for granted. Until one day, she left. No argument, no breakdown, just a quiet goodbye. At first, he didn't take it seriously. He thought she'd come back like always. But the days turned into weeks, then months. No calls answered, no doors opened. And slowly, he realized. He didn't just lose a person, he lost a presence, a peace, a light. But by then, Olivia had healed. In silence. And that silence became her freedom. So if someone regrets losing you, first, don't give them an easy way back. If your value was invisible when you were close, let your absence remain visible now. Second, resist the urge to explain. Let them feel the full weight of their choices without softening it with closure. Third, stand firm in your silence. Not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Because your silence says what words never could. You don't get to walk in and out of my life and expect the door to stay open. Let them regret. Let them remember. But don't let them return. You owe them nothing. But you owe yourself peace. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And when you stop reacting, you don't just protect your peace, you expose their weakness. The power of inner silence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to react to win. And you don't need to explain yourself to prove your worth. In a world addicted to noise, silence is radical. It's not weakness, it's mastery. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are and doesn't need the world's permission to stand tall. When you choose silence, you're not retreating. You're rising above. You're stepping out of the trap and letting time, truth, and karma finish the sentence you never had to speak. A Stoic doesn't chase applause. He doesn't beg for closure. He simply steps back, calm, clear, untouchable. So the next time you're tested, don't respond. Don't explain. Just watch. And let your silence speak everything they refuse to hear. Silence is power in a noisy world. We live in a world obsessed with volume. Everyone wants the last word, the loudest voice, the biggest reaction. But real power? It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase attention. It sits quietly anchored, calm, unshaken. In a world addicted to noise, silence is a revolution. It's not retreat. It's not surrender. It's a statement of self-mastery. Because when you stop arguing, stop explaining, stop performing, you reclaim your energy. You no longer live for applause. You live by truth, by peace, by purpose. So the next time the world tries to pull you into its chaos, remember, you don't have to fight back. You just have to stand still and let your silence do what noise never could. A Stoic doesn't seek applause. They don't crave validation, revenge, or being understood. Instead, they step back. They let time reveal what noise tries to hide. They let truth rise without pushing it. They trust that karma has a longer memory than emotion ever will. It's not passivity, it's mastery. Because some battles aren't worth fighting, not because you're afraid to lose, but because winning would cost your peace. So if they lie, let them. If they betray, let them. If they regret, let them. You don't chase the storm. You become the stillness that outlasts it. In the end, what's real doesn't need to shout. It just waits, and it always returns.